So this is the Traditional Buddhist Chanting class. We're discussing the Homage to the Three Jewels chant tonight. And we're going to begin with another chant. Oh, wait a minute, that's the Heart Sutra. Okay, Heart Sutra is a good chant to start with. Let's do the Heart Sutra. For some reason, I have that primed up. Is that acceptable to everyone to do the Heart Sutra instead of the Great Dharani? Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, let me share my screen. And am I sharing my screen? No. All right. Okay, so tonight we're going to continue talking about the Homage to the Three Jewels chant. Before I jump in, is it either of you have like any questions or anything you want to bring up or?
No,
Okay.
I just know I need to review the past lessons just
Yeah.
to get caught up with that.
Right. Yeah. Well, let me. So, how about you, Elizabeth? Anything? No. Okay. All right. So let me just share my screen again. Start throwing up some PowerPoint slides. Let's see. Now, this is the very first slide for the homage to the three jewels. Today is what is today? Is today the 6th? Yeah, today is the 6th. All right. So this is true, what this slide says. And so tonight we will have a continued discussion of the 7 prostrations, which we began last time we met on May 16th. Then the next time we meet on June 20th, we will discuss the very last part of the Homage to the Three Jewels, which is the Great Aspiration. So let me just fast forward through these slides really quick. Let's see. All right. Let me get to the last slide that we did when we met last, and this is the okay. This slide talks about the first 3 prostrations. Okay, so the just to kind of orient ourselves, this is a present. This is like the entire chant broken up into three parts. So the first part we did during our first class on the Homage to the Three Jewels, which is the 5 fragrances and the incense offering. Just little legend down here. And that's the part that has the red bar next to it. The part with the green bar next to it, and it's also numbered. Numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 7 prostrations, or the 7 homages, you could say. And then the part with the purple bar next to it is the very last part, which is the Great Aspiration. So we did, I'm going to go back to this slide, which was from last time we met. This is what we did last time. The first 3 prostrations were to first Shakyamuni Buddha, then to all the Buddhas, and then to the Dharma. All right. And so these all begin with, and I've actually left it out on this slide, shim myeong, which we talked about. Let's see, I think that's on the previous slide. Yes, shim myeong, which literally means sincere mind prostrate life ritual, which a less literal but a more meaningful in English translation is a wholehearted taking of refuge. So I wholeheartedly take refuge in, and then whatever follows. Now, the first one was in okay, and I do want to revisit just one thing from the previous class: the 4 lives loving Father, which is one of the ways that Shakyamuni Buddha is referred to in the very first of the 7 prostrations. 4 lives represents the 4 different kinds of sentient being. There are sentient beings that are born. Basically, there are sentient beings that are born alive, which are like mammals. There are sentient beings that are born from eggs, so they're hatched, which is birds and fish and other creatures like that. Then there are very, 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 very small creatures, like insects. And then there are creatures that aren't really born. Like if you're born, like if you are, if you end up being reborn in a heavenly realm, beings in heavenly realms don't have a heavenly mommy and a heavenly daddy. And likewise, the hungry ghost realms. So, and the animal realm is covered by the other 3 kinds of births: the live-born, egg-born, and the tiny creatures that at the time of the Buddha they didn't have microscopes, so they couldn't tell where they how they were born. They also didn't know about microscopic creatures. But so in the human realm and the animal realm, that's all covered by the other kinds of births. But then there's another kind of birth where you just kind of appear, and that's called transformation birth. And so if you're born in the heavenly realms, Or if you're born in the hungry ghost realm, again, hungry ghosts don't have a hungry ghost mommy and a hungry ghost daddy. And in the hell realms, you aren't born a little baby in hell and then grow up in hell. You just kind of are born there. That's, to my understanding, that's how it goes. And so, but that's just an explanation of why um, the four lives. These another way of translating this is the four different kinds of birth. So this just basically is covering. This is another way of saying all sentient beings, right? This is poetry. Poets are constantly trying to come up with different ways of saying the same thing, right? Um, so that's why this phrase is used in the first prostration. We've gone through these already in the last meeting, and we've covered this slide now. So now we're going on to the fourth, fifth, and sixth prostration, and then the last prostration will be pretty easy as well, because it's basically these first two. Oh yeah, so the first prostration, the first two prostrations are to the Buddha and all the Buddhas, and then there's the Dharma. So what's missing here is a prostration to the Sangha in general. And so actually the fourth, fifth, and sixth prostration cover a lot of the Sangha, but it's specifics, specific groups of people, beings, students, teachers. Only once we get to the seventh prostration is there a specific prostration or taking homage in or taking refuge in just the Sangha in general. Okay, so the fourth prostration is to the four great Bodhisattvas, and these are Majushri, Samantabhadra, Kwan Bosal, and Jang Bosal. And so when we do the chant, it's Deji Monsu Sari Bosal, haeng Bo Hyeon Bosal, Bi Kwan Seum Bosal, Won Bonjon, Jang Bosal, Mahasal. And the Mahasal is a for emphasis. All of the great bodhisattvas can also be referred to as Bosal Mahasal, which is bodhisattva, great being. And so that's and we're gonna talk about this more, but I want to get the big picture out of the way. The fifth prostration is to the a bunch of different groups of disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha. First, all those who received the teachings on Vulture Peak. And I think we referred to this a little bit when we last met. And it isn't explicit, but it is strongly implied that this is specifically referring to those who were present when the Buddha taught the Lotus Sutra. Then there's the 10 great disciples. Okay, so that's Yong, San, Dang, Shi, Subul, Bu, Chok. That's those who received the teachings on Vulture Peak. The 10 great disciples and the 16th saints, whoever they are, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but that's Shipte, Jeja, Shim, Song. So I'm going to have quite a bit to say about the 10 great disciples and something to say about the 16 saints as well. The 500 holy ones, Obek, Song, Doksuso, Neji. Neji is also and also. The 500 holy ones are the 500 principal disciples of the Buddha. And to my understanding is that all these 500 disciples were all arhats except for Ananda. Ananda had not attained arhatship, had not attained enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha, but he was still counted as one of the 500. He was kind of in a bit of a tricky situation when the Buddha died, because he had not yet attained enlightenment. He wasn't really officially part of the inner circle because he wasn't enlightened, but he was the only, but he was still the one that all the other enlightened disciples of the Buddha had to go to whenever they couldn't remember a certain passage from one of the teachings, because Ananda was the only one who knew them all. And then there's the 1200 great arhats. I don't really know who the 1200 great arhats are. I see this number come up sometimes, but anyway. And then so here is a kind of a general reference to all the uncountable, compassionate, noble Sangha, myeong, jung. And actually, in the version of the chant that Zen Master Sung San taught to his students, the jabi is left out. So that's why I have compassionate in parentheses and jabi. We say myeong songjung when we do the homage to the three jewels chant. And then the sixth prostration is another list of important people and beings, those who have come from the west to the east, especially to Korea, Sogon Dong Jin Gupa He Dong, and to every great ancestor of previous generations who has transferred the lamp, that is the lamp of the Dharma, Yok Daejon, Dung Je Dajos Daejosa, and to all the great masters below heaven, as in below heaven. These are all of these beings that are being referred to after the four great bodhisattvas. Everyone down here is all just human beings below heaven. And to all the good spiritual friends who are as numerous as the atoms of the universe. So that's a very nice phrase, that the good spiritual friends who are part of the Sangha are as numerous as the atoms of the universe. Now, any questions or comments on that? I'm going to have a lot more to say about these, but okay, yeah, Elizabeth, please.
What's the word for Korea in the?
That's good. We might get to that. We're gonna look at the Chinese characters in a few minutes. But yeah, we'll if I, it's in there somewhere. I mean, so it's interesting that this chant is in Chinese, but it was written by Koreans, and so they were in listing all the people that they wanted to pay homage to. They wanted to especially pay homage to the people who brought the teachings to Korea. If that makes sense. So it's in there somewhere. I forget which one of these is Korea, but we'll get that by the end of the class tonight for sure. Even if I have to Google it during the break, which I may end up doing. Okay. Thanks. Joe, did you have something?
I did, but I'm wondering if the Korea is the SEO. Just because I'm thinking back, isn't there like a Seong dynasty in Korea?
So there's Seong, Silla, there's Goryeo, there's Koryo, there's Picche, anyway. There, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then there's Chosun, and there's yeah. But we'll yeah. Anyway, so was there something else you wanted to bring up, Joe, or ask about?
Just very quickly, do the numbers in the fifth prostration, do those speak of numbers that are more symbolic or auspicious in looking at this, opposed to just a count of 10 or
Right.
500?
Yeah. So there are, in fact, and we'll talk about this in just a minute, there are lots of different lists of, the who are the chief or the great or the top or the, disciples of the Buddha. And this list here is a kind of a specific thing, although it turns out that sometimes it's 16, sometimes it's 18. Usually it's either 16 or 18. This is on the one hand, this is actually kind of a specific group of people with a very specific job description. Sometimes the people who are listed differ a little bit, and they're individual, but we'll get to that in a second. And this varies a lot. Who are the great disciples of the Buddha? Um, and in particular, which we're going to talk about in a minute. The 500 and the 1200. These are, I'm sure they have probably lots of meanings in traditionally, but these are traditional numbers. I don't know anything more about that.
Meaning that number 501 just didn't make the
cut. Yeah.
Sorry.
And even the five, so Ananda was kind of number 500, and he just barely was in, and kind of not. Yeah. Okay. All right. So so some of these questions will be answered a little bit more as we go on. But first, I want to look at the format of the homage to the three jewels is a very general. It's a general formula that is not specific just to the particular chant that we have as the homage to the three jewels. In fact, the form of the chant as it's done in Korea by Koreans is slightly different from what Zen Master Seong taught. But here is here is a very similar chant that has been around for a while in Korea. It's called the Homage to the Ocean of Fragrant Water. And this is from the 100-year-old approximately kind of handbook of Korean rituals and ceremonies and chants called the Vulture Peak. And it starts with a tea offering, not an incense offering. It starts with a tea offering. And then after the tea offering, there's a bunch of homage to this, homage to that. The Vairocana Buddha, Nosana Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. These three Buddhas represent the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha. And so that's how this chant starts off, with the three different bodies or kayas of the Buddha. Then there's the medicine Buddha, then there's Amitabha, then there's Maitreya, then there's Mahatejas, who is the disperser of calamities of the metal wheel world. A bit of a mystery to me, but Mahatejas is associated with Lucid Mountain, which I think is Ame Mountain. There are 4 sacred mountains in China that are associated with different bodhisattvas. This is not the usual association. Anyway, so there's mountains, there's great mountains, and there's great bodhisattvas. Munsu is, I'm pretty sure Munsu is Majushri. Oh no, here's Ame Mountain. It's down here. Homage to the one whose abode is Ame Mountain of the silver-hued world, Bohyeon. Okay, so and Bohyeon is Samantabhadra. Okay, then there's the Adamantine Mountain, which is with Dharma Arisen Bodhisattva. This is another. And so, anyway, the point here, Mount Potalaka is associated with Kwan Seum. So this is the usual association, or at least the one that I am most familiar with, and the one that you're most likely to find if you start Googling what are the sacred mountains for Buddhists in China and what bodhisattvas are they associated with. You'll find Mount Potalaka, although it's often called Mount Puto or Putuo or something like that, is associated with Avalokiteshvara or Kwan Seum. Seven Gem Mountain and Daiseiji. Daiseiji is not. Yeah. I was looking up all these bodhisattvas earlier today. And so basically, if you want to know, you go through this document and copy and paste these into Google and find out more than you would ever want to know about all of these different bodhisattvas. This is interesting. Homage to the one whose abode is with Yamana of the underworld, Jang. So Jang, who lives in the underworld with Yamana, the king of the underworld. Chundi, who abides in the secret repository of Vajradhatu. That sounds pretty cool. Homage to those whose abode is the entirety of space. Okay.
Wow.
And then there's the 28 Indian patriarchs, the 6 patriarchs of the Tang. That is the usual list of the starting with Bodhidharma and ending with Huineng. And here, of course, this is a very common translation of a character that actually has no gender to it. Simply means ancestor, but nevertheless, it is almost inevitably translated as patriarch. Um, the 6 patriarchs of the Tang, the 5 divided streams of the lineage. I think this refers to the 5 houses of Zen. I'm not completely sure about that. And then here it is, the great spiritual friends, numberless as motes of dust. And then at the end, and this is kind of my point, we have the great aspiration. We solely desire that the infinite 3 jewels receive with great love and great compassion our reverent homage, filling us from within and clothing us with their divine power. We wish that together with all the sentient beings of the Dharma realm, we may enter as one into Amita's great ocean of vows. Okay, so this is slightly different than the version of the great aspiration in the version of the homage to the 3 jewels that we do, that Zen Master Sung San, where it just says that we basically, not that we enter into Amita's great ocean of vows, but that we all attain the Buddha way all together, all at once, all sentient beings. Okay, so it begins with an offering, little offering part, then a bunch of prostrations or homages, and then it ends with the great aspiration. So it's the same pattern as the homage to the 3 jewels that Zen Master Sung San taught his students. This is yet a slightly different ritual practice from the Bulja Pilam. So this is another traditional practice done. This one begins with the fivefold incense offering, which is what Zen Master Sung San taught his students to begin the homage to the 3 jewels with, the mantra for offering incense. And then like the one we were just looking at, this homage to the ocean of fragrant water explicitly lists Vairocana, Nosana, and Shakyamuni Buddhas without stating that Vairocana is here representing the Dharmakaya, Nosana is representing the Sambhogakaya, and Shakyamuni is representing the Nirmanakaya Buddha. In this version, it just says the 3 bodies of the Buddha: the Dharma body, the reward body, and the transformation body, which is a different way of an English translation. Instead of saying Dharmakaya, it's the Dharma body. Instead of saying Sambhogakaya, this is reward body. And instead of saying Nirmanakaya, this is transformation body. Whatever transformation body means, or reward body, or Dharma body, I don't see personally much that is gained by translating that into English, because in English this doesn't mean anything. The Dharma body, as a phrase in the English language, there is no meaning that that we attach to that. That a native speaker of English would recognize that as having some meaning. With utmost sincerity, we go for refuge and give homage to the 3 Buddhas of the past, those who currently are of the 4 stages, and the 7 Tathagatas. The 7 Tathagatas, anyway. We go for refuge to and give homage to all the Tathagata Buddhas of this world, 5 regions. That and the future founding teacher of the Dragon Flower Assembly, the compassionate one, Maitreya Buddha. Maitreya, who's not mentioned in the version of the homage to the 3 jewels that we use, and it's also currently the one that's primarily used, at least by the Choge order in Korea. All the inconceivable Buddhas of the ocean-like flower garland assembly. That's of course the Avatamsaka, those who all the Buddhas that are mentioned in the Avatamsaka Sutra. Give homage to the jeweled chest of the written sutras. It's another interesting edition. And this one, homage to the guiding teacher of the Bodhimanda Kwanzu Bosal, the principal one of our veneration, he of great vows, Jang, to the Bodhisattvas, as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, like a net of helpful stars. Now this is nice. I'm going to have to look this up. The version of the Vulture Peak that is readily available for download at the Choke Orders website doesn't give the original; it just gives the translation for most of these things. I would love to find what the original is for referring to the Bodhisattvas as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, like a net of helpful stars. That's such a nice little phrase. Anyway, 53 and anyway, and then this ends again. Furthermore, it's I don't know why they put furthermore in there, but with utmost sincerity, we again go for refuge and give homage to each of the three jewels and the limitless worthies and saints of the 10 directions, having exhausted the realm of space. We solely desire that the inexhaustible three jewels receive our reverent homage with great love and compassion and imbue us with the power of their divine aid. May all the sentient beings of the Dharma realm together enter Amita's ocean of great vows. So again, same pattern. Offering, this time it uses the same offering that we use, that Zen Master Sung taught, is the homage to the three jewels, the incense offering, the incense mantra, a bunch of homages, prostrations, refuges, whatever you want to call these, but all beginning with the same phrase, with utmost sincerity, ji shim gu myeong ye, and then ending with the great aspiration. And again, here the great aspiration is slightly differently worded. Instead of having the aspiration that all beings throughout the universe all together attain the Buddha way, enter Amita's ocean of great vows. All right. So the if you go to the Choke Orders website and you look at what they have for the homage to the three jewels or the Ye Bowl ceremony, it's exactly like what Zen Master Sung San taught his students, with one exception, and that is that in the Ye Bowl as it's currently done, is that first there's an offering of tea, and then there's the incense offering, and then the rest is just like what we do. After the tea offering and the incense offering, then there's the 7 prostrations and the final great aspiration at the end, which is in the same form as what Zen Master Sung San taught to his students. Okay, so next we're going to talk about these 4 great bodhisattvas. In fact, we're going to talk about the 8 great bodhisattvas. We'll do that after the break in about 5 minutes. Okay, is that good? It's okay to take a break now? Okay, 5-minute break. So now we're back. So I was Googling, trying to find Korea in there, and I think it's kind of a funky name for Korea that I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging on. I cheated and looked at Stanley Lombardo's word for word translation of the chant. He doesn't have Korea in there anywhere, but let me just show you. Let's see, where are the slides? Well, actually, when we get to, this is the Heart Sutra slide. Where are we? Which class am I teaching? Yeah, here we go. When we get to the slide that has the actual Chinese characters, we'll look at what might be where it says Korea. It doesn't say it's a name for Korea, I think, but it's not. It's like calling the United States of America, Columbia. That's oh Columbia. Sometimes in patriotic songs and things and poetry, America has different names. Why is it called America? I used to. There was a Italian map maker named Amerigo Vespucci, and I've heard that some people dispute that that's really where the name of America comes from. But he drew a map of this part of the world, and the map said Amerigo on it. That was his name, and so people said, that's Amerigo. Anyway, so the way that things get their names is often strange. But I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and looking at the next slide, which is now. Okay. So, are there any questions other than how does Korea get in there? Anybody think of anything over the break? Okay, all right. So, the fourth prostration is to the four great Bodhisattvas. This is a map of China that I stole from a Wikipedia page and then added some extra labeling to it because it has a bunch of mountains that are on here. The mountains that I circled in red are the four mountains that correspond to the four great Bodhisattvas. This is a list of 8 great Bodhisattvas, and if we had enough time, I could spend a lot of time talking about all. What I would really love to do is to talk particularly about the other 4 Bodhisattvas that didn't make the list, because they're actually not as well known. It's not surprising, but actually, when I was looking at the other versions, the other chants that are very similar to the homage to the 3 jewels. Remember the two other chants that I showed that were a bit longer. They listed a lot of other beings in there. In particular, they listed many of these other beings. Samantabhadra is in ours. Sarva Nirvarana Vishkambin is definitely not in ours, but it turns out this is a really interesting bodhisattva. This is a bodhisattva who is primarily a bodhisattva for meditation. Akashagarbha is a very interesting bodhisattva. So I used to have 3 stars next to each one that, so I should put that back in. I should fix this slide. This was supposed to tell you down here. The ones that have 3 stars next to them are also the 4 great bodhisattvas, but then I took off the stars for some reason. Anyway, so Mahastama Prapta is a very interesting and important bodhisattva. Akashagarbha, Sarvan Nivarana Vishkambin Bodhisattva is very interesting, and of course Maitreya. But we have the Majushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Kwan Bosal, aka Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva of compassion, Kshitigarbha, Bodhisattva of great vows, which I prefer to translate it as aspiration. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of practice. Those are the 4 great Bodhisattvas in the Homage to the Three Jewels chant. And they're also considered to be the 4 great bodhisattvas in Chinese Buddhism, in Japanese Buddhism, Vietnamese Buddhism, as well as in Korean Buddhism, and in Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. They all still all also refer to these sacred mountains. The association of these sacred mountains with particular bodhisattvas is general to East Asian Buddhism, including parts of East Asia that are outside of China. Although there are, it's too bad, in labeling Mount Puto, which is also called Mount Potalaca, I put this label right on top of Korea, so you can hardly see Korea on this map, unfortunately. Anyway, the 4 great bodhisattvas and the 8 great bodhisattvas are very interesting beings to look into. Yes. Now, the disciples of the Buddha, yeah. So these, when somebody says the 10 chief disciples of the Buddha, they're usually referring to the 10 chief male disciples of the Buddha. Isn't that always the case? There are also so there's lots more than 10 important male disciples of the Buddha, but there are also a lot more than 10 important female disciples of the Buddha. I've listed some others down here that didn't make either of these lists, but just as there is a male disciple who is the primary disciple of the Buddha for her wisdom, for his wisdom, and for her wisdom, Kema, who so Kema is sometimes referred to as King Bimbisara's wife, but it's really much more appropriate to say that King Bimbisara was Kema's husband, because Kema is actually the one of the most important chief disciples of the Buddha, right up there with Shariputra. Upalavana was the a female disciple most noteworthy for her mastering of supernatural powers, just as Moggallana or Maudgalyayana, as is also known, was the male equivalent. Mahaprajapati is just foremost in her attainments. Mahakasyapa, who became the first ancestor of Zen, he is kind of the male counterpart of Mahaprajapati. Mahaprajapati, the woman who raised the Buddha, and Mahakasyapa is the foremost of the male disciples in his mastery of ascetic training. Yasodhara, aka the Buddha's wife, she was the foremost of the Buddha's female disciples for the super knowledges, which is so. Subhuti was foremost in understanding emptiness, which is, I think, kind of corresponding to the super knowledges. Dhammadina was the foremost of the Buddha's female disciples in teaching the Dharma, kind of an important. And of course, there's a male a disciple, Purna. Patachara was foremost in her discipline. Nanda was the female disciple most known for her mastery of meditation and mental absorption. Aniruddha was also the male disciple foremost for his mastery of mindfulness and also for his clairvoyance. Singalamatu was foremost in faith. Upali is kind of the foremost in the knowledge of the monastic code. So Badakalapiti Ba da Kapilana was foremost in remembering her past lives, and kind of the Rahula, who's the Buddha's son. Uh, this doesn't match up all that well, but he was the first to become a novice monk. So that's his distinction, in addition to being the Buddha's biological son. And Kundalakesha, Kundalakesha is a very interesting character. One of the more interesting. This is she's known as the Buddha's student who killed her husband. Um, so she was foremost of all the female disciples in how quickly she attained arhatship. She attained arhatship so quickly due to her incredible intelligence. And so the story of she and her husband is really a very tragic story. She fell madly in love with some guy who was no good, basically, and after he had essentially robbed her of everything that she had, he decided he was going to take the last bits of jewelry that she had and then kill her. And so, because she was so highly intelligent, she figured out what was going on. And she not only figured out what was going on, but she figured out a way that her husband ended up going over the cliff instead of her. And that is, according to the traditional stories, considered to be a sign of her great intelligence. She then, after that, now she became an outcast, of course, because she had killed her husband, even though everybody knew he had it coming. Nevertheless, it sets a bad example. Was the general opinion in society, even because there's a lot of husbands who have it coming. One could argue. And we can't just condone that kind of behavior. So she became a wandering, a homeless ascetic practitioner and a philosopher. She joined up. There was at that time in India bands of women, homeless women who traveled around together, um, studying philosophy. And what they would do, they would go to villages. This is, I mean, I I don't know if this is a true story, but I mean, it's too good of a story to not, to pass up. And this is a traditional story that's been told since the time of the Buddha. So this is not, uh, uh, if it's not true, it was made up a long, long time ago. Uh, these groups of women would travel from village to village, and whenever they came to a village, they would ask, "Who's the smartest man in your village?" And then they would pick from among themselves. They would pick one of their people to debate, whoever was, and they would, they always won. And so Kundalakesha, she was like the smartest of them all in this band of wandering ascetic female yogins, philosophers. And so they came to a village where Shariputra was staying, and she was unable to defeat him in a debate, and that's how she became. Anyway, I like that story. Sorry, Ananda is her counterpart, and he was foremost for his amazing memory. There's lots of other, so there's lots of other people who didn't make the cut. Okay, uh, Isidasi, who could remember all of her past lives within 7 days of being ordained. Sona, who within a similarly short period of time was able to boil water with her mind. Um, she was, since she was a very junior nun, she was basically the servant to the more senior nuns. And one time the senior nuns came back, they're ready for their tea break, and she had forgot to boil the water. So she just looked at the teapot and the water started to boil. And the other nuns treated her with a lot more respect after that. Anyway,
Mhm.
Soma, who is one of the 10 female disciples who defeated Mara, there's a whole series of stories in the Pali Suttas about uh, uh, women disciples of the Buddha who defeated Mara one on one, just as the Buddha himself had done. And of course, there's Angulimala, famous Angulimala, the mass murderer who became a devotee of the Buddha, and who was especially known for two things. One, his after his life of being a mass murderer, his absolute devotion to nonviolence, and he was especially to this day, he's especially loved and revered by women in childbirth. They pray. It's tradition in Buddhist countries, Theravada, Mahayana, Tibetan, whatever. Women in childbirth pray to Angulimala. Um, some rich guy named Anathapindika. He was a chief patron. He was the one who donated Jetavana Grove to the Buddha. Bimbisar, he donated Bamboo Grove, and he was the husband of Kema. Visakha was the chief female patron. Malika, the foremost among female lay disciples in making offerings to Buddha. And then there's one woman whose name we don't even know. There's a very wonderful story associated with her. We know her husband's name, Ugasena, but she's known as the acrobat. She became an arhat. One of the things that's notable about her in listing female disciples, she attained enlightenment without ever receiving any teachings from the Buddha. She only received teachings from other female disciples of the Buddha, and attained arhatship very, very, very quickly. So anyway, none of these people are named by name in the chant. It just says the 10 chief disciples of the Buddha. And as we saw, there's lots of different forms of this kind of chant. But there's none that I know of, at least traditionally, that specifically list female disciples. Yeah, okay, good. Now, the 16 arhats is another really interesting subject. Let's see, I know that Elizabeth has probably heard me talk about the 16 arhats. We've talked about that, and so it's a subject that I'm really fascinated by. These were 16 students of the Buddha who are still alive. Now, if you read a biography of the Buddha, if you read one at least that's fairly complete, it will include this really weird story where the Buddha says to Ananda, the Buddha says to Ananda that he, the Buddha, doesn't have to die. All that has to happen is for someone to ask him not to die, and he can remain alive until Maitreya comes. And Ananda just kind of says, really interesting. And the Buddha says it again. He says it 3 times. I don't have to die. All that's necessary is for someone to ask me not to die, and I won't die. And this is when the Buddha was very old. Everybody knew he was going to die. And the Buddha had actually been going around telling people, of course I'm going to die. Everything that is born must die. That's my teaching. It's always been my teaching. You will die. The guy standing next to you will die. All of your children will die. Your parents may have already, this is the way it is. And it's inconceivable that anyone who follows my teaching could be in any way, surprised or put out or taken aback by the fact that I'm going to die. That's what I've always taught. And after going around telling people that, then the Buddha, when he and Ananda are off by themselves, he says, oh, by the way, I don't have to die. All that's necessary is for someone to ask me to not die. And Ananda 3 times just says, huh, really? And then the Buddha tells him a 3rd time and waits. And he says, okay, Ananda, now I have to die because you didn't ask me to not die. And this was yet another thing that the 499 chief disciples of the Buddha who had attained enlightenment, this was yet another thing that they had to hold against Ananda. Not only had he not attained enlightenment, but he and he alone could have kept the Buddha alive. Now, one of the reasons why that story is it doesn't make sense because like I said, the Buddha had been going around telling people that he has to die, and it would be completely inconsistent with his teachings if he didn't die. And nevertheless, this little story is inserted into the life of the Buddha. One of the reasons for it is because it explains this phenomenon of the 16 arhats. These 16, because what the Buddha did was he turned around and he asked these 16 students to not die. They were arhats, and the Buddha knew how to ask the question just right, and they didn't have any choice. In fact, so here's so this is from a chant. This is so in the Homage to the Three Jewels chant, we include, homage to the 16 arhats along with a bunch of other people. There are separate chants that are just to an invocation for the 16 arhats. And so it goes along with this. This is a little footnote to this chant, to who's the foremost among the 16 arhats. And this is a funny little story about him. When Pindola used supernatural powers to win a contest, the Buddha rebuked him and banished Pindola to Pargodania, wherever that is. At the same time, as a punishment, the Buddha also forbade, which one is this? This is Pindola. I think he's usually just referred to as Pindola. Forbade him from entering parinirvana, telling him he had to stay. So this is kind of, and this is not something that comes from Mahayana Buddhist teachings. This comes from pre-Mahayana or non-Mahayana Buddhist schools in many parts of Asia. It's the tradition, although it's not originally from, because obviously this is similar to, but different from a bodhisattva. These are not people who have taken the vow, I will not, I will, stay in samsara to save all beings. Well, they are going to stay in samsara to save all beings, but because they've been told to by the Buddha, and they've actually been at least in this version, they've actually been required to do it. And in the specific case of Pindola, it's kind of a punishment. Anyway, okay. And so this is these are beings like Bodhisattvas. And so just as people like to pray to Kwan Bosal, Jang Bosal, Samantabhadra, and so forth. These are all beings that are actively looked to for help. They're here to help us. They don't necessarily want to be here to help us, but they are. And it doesn't matter that they don't really want to, because they're doing what the Buddha told them to do. So it's not like it's a great honor to do what the Buddha has asked you to do, right? So here they are. I forgot to take it. Anyway, so I like that story. That's where the 16 arhats come from. And this is, if you do a Google on the 16 arhats, you'll find Tibetan Buddhist practices associated with them, and lots of other Buddhist practices associated with them. Okay, now we are at the Chinese part. So now we're going to finish up in the next few minutes, but do we have any questions or complaints or anything so far with anything we've covered?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Had you mentioned 16 saints earlier, and are those the 16
Yes.
arhats?
Yes.
One and the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. So now we're looking at the actual what we chant, which is in the bold. This is the the transliteration when we do the Homage to the Three Jewels chant. Jishim Guimyong Ye Deji Munsu Sari Bosal. So Jishim Guimyong Ye, this is the we pay homage to part. Deji Munsu Sari Bosal. De Haeng Bohyun Bosal. De Bi Kwan Seum Bosal. De Won Bonjon Jijang Bosal Maha Sal. So that's that line. And this is kind of here's a literal translation. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of interesting to you see a lot of days in here. See, this is the character for day. These are all day, 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 day. Anyway, next one. Yeah, Jishim Guimyong Ye, Yongsan Dang Shi Sububul Chok, Didi Mountain. So Didi Mountain, Yongsan. This is a different name for Vulture Peak. I'm gonna have to let's see. Receives the Buddhist teachings. Yongsan Dangshi Sububul Chok, Shipte Jeja Shimnyuksong, 10 great disciples and the 16 nobles. So this can be translated as the the arhats, the noble ones, the saints. Obek, 500. O Beck, if you know a little bit of Chinese, you might be able to recognize these characters. Obek, Song Doksuso Neji, the 500 holy ones, and also Chon Ebek, that's 1200. J Darahan, arhats. Here this is more recognizable. Arhats. Muryang, which is also in the four great vows, without number. Songjong, the noble assembly, without number. Jishim Guimyongye. Okay. Sogon Dongjim Gupa Heidong. Okay. West sky, east lightning. West sky, east lightning is referring to the Dharma being transmitted from west to east. Reach self Korea. So these last two characters, are a character for sea and east. And east sea is, I think, and I'm going to have to double check this. I think this is one way of referring to Korea. But I'm going to have to do some more checking on that. Next part is pretty straightforward. Previous generations transfer lamp every great ancestor teacher. So all the great teachers from previous generations who have transferred the lamp of the Dharma. Heaven below, Grandmaster, all the great teachers below heaven, that is here on earth, that is in the human realm. All small particles count every great, so it's Chongha, Jongsa, Ilche. Ilche is every or all. Ilche Mijin Su Jade, Son Ji Shik, which literally means good, perceive, realize. This is actually the Chinese expression that's used to translate the Sanskrit term Kalyana Mitrata, which is a very important concept in Buddhism. It means good, admirable friends in the Dharma, who are as numerous as the particles of the universe. And then the very last prostration is to the Sangha. So this is going back to the pattern that we saw in the first three prostrations. Jishim Gumyong Ye, Shibang Samse, 10 directions, 3 worlds. That's basically everything. Indra's net, land, ocean. That means even more of everything. This means the entire universe. Eternal life, every Sangha assembly. And so this can be translated as, we sincerely pay homage to all the holy Sanghas, which, like Indra's net, pervade all the lands and oceans of the 10 directions and the 3 worlds. And this is just a link to the blog entry that I have, where I go through and give these give this breakdown of the homage to the 3 jewels. Let's see. So it's now almost 8:15. We should chant the homage to the 3 jewels together as our closing. But if do you have any final thoughts or questions or comments? Still haven't nailed down where Korea comes into it, but I'm pretty sure it's at pretty sure it is Hae Dong, Hae Dong. But I'll verify that before next time. Let's see. Also, just there will be the other class that meets on the other Tuesdays. This is the class that meets on the first and third Tuesdays. The class on the Kshitigarbha, the Jang Bosal book club, will meet next Tuesday. I'll be in a different location, but I'll be able to do the class from where I'm going to be. All right. So now let me just find. I'll stop sharing for just a minute. This is okay. Here we are. Okay. So now we'll do the homage to the 3 jewels together as our closing. Thank you for coming. Sorry, I'm running a little over. It's not 8:15 yet, but it'll be past 8:15 by the time we finish with the homage to the 3 jewels. But I think it's good to end with that.
수불 부처 십대 제자 십육성 오백성덕 수성 내지 천이백 제다란 무량성중 지심기명예 성공동진구바해동 역대전동 제대조사 천하정사 일체미진수 제대 선지식 지심기명예 시방삼세 제망차례 상주 일체 승가야중 유언무진삼보 대자대비 수화정예명혼가비력 원경법계제중생 자타 일시 성불교
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming, Elizabeth and Joe.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.